Morning, everybody. I am Coach Brett L. Pape. That is Coach Bruce, and this is the Coach Approach. Coach, we're here on a Saturday morning. I think this is our first ever Saturday show. You got some things going on tomorrow. And the good thing is that if we were going to do it and include the London game, we would have had to have a show at 4:30 in the morning. I don't think either one of us wanted to do that. So here we are. Let's jump right into it. Game one. In fact, I don't see the London game. Do we have the London game in here?
We did that on the Wednesday show, so I didn't know if you wanted to recap that or.
Well, we'll maybe talk a little bit about it later. So let's move right into the 10 a.m. slate tomorrow. We've got the Los Angeles Rams 1-2 at the surprisingly good Indianapolis Colts 2-1. Coach, I'll give my pick first. I like the Colts in this one. I like the way they're playing on defense. I like the way that they just seem to be really rallying around the new coach. I know you really eye on them coming in from Philadelphia. So I got the Colts winning 24-21. How do you see this one playing out, Coach?
Yeah, I've got Colts 21, Rams 20. It was really a coin toss for me. The Colts do have Ryan Kelly, their center, and left tackle Bernard Raymond that are out due to concussion protocol, and they've got a third lineman that's a little bit banged up. But Anthony Richardson returns. I like what he's done in the run game, and I like what Zach Moss has done over the last 2 weeks. So I went Colts. This means the Rams do cover at +1.5 because I've only got the Colts winning by 1, and then we project the score to be at 41 points. So I've got them on the under.
Who do you like starting and sitting in this one?
So let's start with starting like must starts for me. I've got Kyron Williams. He's played 98% on 100% of the snaps over the last 2 weeks post Cam Akers. He's got 17 targets over the last 2 weeks. He's got 4 total touchdowns, 3 on the ground, 1 through the air. Volume is king. Even though the Colts are only giving up 73 yards per game and 13.3 fantasy points to running backs, I still like Kyron Williams on a volume play. I like Puka Nacua, 21.4 fantasy points per game. Colts ranks 25th in receiving yards against while giving up the 8th most fantasy points to the wide receiver position. So I like Puka Nacua, and then I like Tutu Atwell. 26 targets through the first 3 games, 35 targets in 13 games last season. So he's just made a tremendous jump with Cooper Kupp out. This is the last week, as of right now, that you're going to get him before Cooper Kupp returns, assuming Kupp is back in week 5. I know there's questions about that, but he's earned a 21% target share, 11th in air yards, and 16th in fantasy points per game. So I'll take Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams as my 3 must starts. Matthew Stafford is interesting. I know some would play him. It depends on, who your other options are at quarterback. He has had 46 pressure throws, which is number 1 in the league, only 2 touchdown passes on the season. So, yes, he's peppering the ball. He's peppering Nacua and Atwell. He was getting Higbee involved. We know Higbee's got the Achilles issue. We don't know if he's playing or not. But Matthew Stafford, for me, is not a must start, but he's not a sit either. It just depends on what your lineup looks like.
There we go. Let's move on to our next game, and I'm really looking forward to watching this. That's Baltimore Ravens 2-1 at the Cleveland Browns. The Browns defense is playing as good as any defense, and that may offend you a little bit, but they're playing as good a defense as anybody in the league. And Baltimore's still a little bit banged up. I like Cleveland 21, Baltimore 17. How about you?
Yeah, I've got Cleveland 24, Baltimore 21, so we're close, which means Cleveland Browns are at -2.5. They'll cover that. And then I've got the over with them scoring 45 points with a 40.5 over-under.
There you go. I got the under, but let's move on to start and sits. For Baltimore, everyone was worried, or not worried, but interested in seeing what Lamar Jackson was going to do in this new offense. He's completing 73% of his passes for 608 yards and 2 touchdowns. But what I really like is you're still seeing the run volume. He's got 32 carries for 193 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he's a must start. I'm always starting Mark Andrews. And, they're really banged up at the receiver position. There's going to be no Bateman, no Beckham, so I'm starting Zay Flowers. For Cleveland, I'm starting Jerome Ford, Amari Cooper, and Elijah Moore. We're a little bit concerned about the health of Deshaun Watson, something to monitor tomorrow morning. So I'm sitting Deshaun Watson and David Njoku for Cleveland, and I'm sitting Justice Hill. He's a little banged up himself, and I'm sitting Nelson Aguilar, and obviously I'm sitting Bateman and Beckman with them being out. Moving on to game 3, we've got 2 0-3 teams. Somebody's going to be a winner at the end of the weekend, and I think it's going to be the Minnesota Vikings beating the Carolina Panthers 27-20. How do you see this one going?
I've got Vikings 27, Panthers 21. So we're only 1 point off. That means the Vikings cover at -4, and we've got the over at 46.5 with them scoring a combined 48 points. As far as starts go in this game, I've got Kirk Cousins. He's 24.2 fantasy points per game. He's a QB1 in pass attempts, passing yards, second red zone attempts. Look, it's volume. It's Kevin O'Connell. They want to throw the football. They're first in pass plays per game at 46 and third in pace of play at 2.35 plays per minute. Alexander Madison, 11.9 fantasy points per game. This is the last week, I think. I don't think Cam Akers is too involved this week. I think Madison's coming off a good performance last week with 17.5 fantasy points and 25 total touches. So I like him this week in a good matchup against the Panthers. And then I like Justin Jefferson. That's we can throw all the numbers out there. We know he's at the top of the leaderboard in every category. And then you got TJ Hawkinson, who's tight end 2 at 17 fantasy points per game in PPR formats. Panthers give up the 11th most points to the tight end position. And I like Jordan Addison. He wasn't a must start for me coming up to, the first 3 weeks of the season. He's a wide receiver 40, but he's at 14.5 fantasy points per game. His snap share has increased each week, and he's actually leading in targets and receptions over KJ Osborne, who's almost been non-existent. I like Jordan Addison this week. For Carolina, I like Miles Sanders, leads the league in targets at the running back position. I like Adam Thielen. Again, we talked about this, I think, on Wednesday. I'm going to continue to play him until the wheels fall off. He's at 18.4 fantasy points per game. And then tight end Hayden Hurst, depending on what your lineup is. He's only 7.4 points per game. So he's not a must start for me. And then wide receiver 50 is DJ Shark this week. 18.6 points last week in his first game back. So I like DJ Shark this week as in deeper formats. And then for sitting, I'm sitting KJ Osborne. We talked about him. I'm sitting Bryce Young. He's only 11.5 fantasy points per game, QB 29 on the season. Yes, it's a favorable matchup, but he's lowest in passing grade and yards per attempt in the NFL of 34 qualifying quarterbacks. And then I'm not playing Terrace Marshall or Jonathan Mingo.
That's going to be a fun game to watch. And I mean that sincerely because, they're playing for something, and we'll see what happens with it. So let's move on. Cincinnati Bengals, 1-2 at Tennessee Titans, 1-2. I like the Bengals 23, Titans 17. Who do you see winning, Coach?
I've got Bengals 24, Tennessee Titans 16, which means the Bengals cover at -2.5, and we get the under at 41.
All right, for starting sitting this week, what I was really happy to see last week was somehow, some way, Joe Burrow somewhat got back on track a little bit. And he did it by going after Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase looked very much like Jamar Chase last week. And I like T. Higgins this week. I don't like Joe Mixon. Obviously, if you've got Joe Mixon, you're probably starting him. But I don't like this run defense that we've seen out of Tennessee so far. For Tennessee, I like Derrick Henry and I like DeAndre Hopkins. I know we both kind of have some concerns about those guys. We talked about Hopkins on Wednesday, but I kind of see them bouncing back this week. And I look for Henry to kind of, I look for them to unleash him a little bit more. I feel like, obviously with his age and how many carries had over his career, I think they're kind of getting him off a little slow. But I like to see, I like him this week. Sitting, I already talked a little bit about Joe Mixon. I'm also sitting Tyler Boyd. For Tennessee, I'm sitting Ryan Tannehill, and I'm sitting the tight end Chig Ukakononabo. Ho.
Conquo. I love it. Hey, man. Get chiggy with it, man. Come on, get chiggy with it.
I knew I wasn't going to get it right, so I just thought I'd have a little fun with it.
There you go.
All right, hey, let's move on to the next one. Tampa Bay Buccaneers 2-1 at New Orleans Saints 2-1. It's kind of funny all week long. We even talked about Derek Carr probably not playing this week, but then we got a report yesterday that he was out working with the number ones, and he looked to be throwing kind of injury-free. So if that's the case, I like the Saints winning.
Yeah, I've got Saints 23, Tampa Bay 19. I think it's closer, a close game. Saints like to grind it out. I think they use Kamara a little bit more. I love what they do defensively, which means New Orleans covers the spread at -3, and we have the over. As far as starts go for Tampa Bay, so Mike Evans is 21.6 fantasy points per game. He's played very, very well, on pace to hit over 1,000 yards again, but he faces Marshawn Lattimore. If you know the history there, he gives him fits. He traveled against DeAndre Hopkins and shut DeAndre Hopkins down. In the 4 games that Lattimore has shadowed Evans since 2020, he's got 3 touchdowns, but has never surpassed 50 receiving yards. I'm looking forward to seeing that. If you have Mike Evans, you're still playing him, but it is a tough matchup this week. I just can't take him out of my lineup based on what he's done this season. Chris Godwin's only 9.7 fantasy points per game. I think it's a better upside for him. If Lattimore does shadow Mike Evans, then I expect Chris Godwin to be more involved this week. So I do like Chris Godwin in deep perform. He's not a must start, but he's a guy that I do like this week based on the matchup, who you have at the receiver position. For the Saints, if Derek Carr is playing, I'm still not starting Derek Carr. I'm only starting those two guys. Those are the two guys that I think are starts there. And, of course, Alvin Kamara, season debut. Temper expectations in his first game back. I do expect him to see RB1 volume because, look, he's the clear cut. He's the most talented guy in that backfield. Jamal Williams is still out. I'm not impressed with Tony Jones Jr., and Kendre Miller just hasn't seen the opportunities yet. So the Saints are trying to win. So I like Kamara. I like Chris Olave. I'm taking Chris regardless of who the quarterback is. And then Michael Thomas. I'm not big on Michael Thomas this week, especially if it's Jameis Winston that does play. He's more of a short to intermediate guy. Winston likes to go deep. That favors Olave over Michael Thomas. And then Rashid Shaheed is wide receiver 49 this week. I like him over Michael Thomas if Winston plays as well. And sits, I'm sitting Baker Mayfield, and I'm sitting Rachaad White. He's got the volume, but he's done nothing with that volume. He's 41st in missed tackles forced per attempt and 46 in yards after contact per attempt. I don't like Cade Otton. Had some promise come in this year, but only 5.5 fantasy points per game. So then for the Saints, I'm not playing Jameis Winston. I don't trust it. I think they're going to try to ride Kamara, and they're going to try to be safe and limit his turnovers, and maybe play at a slower pace this week. So I'm not playing Jameis Winston if he's in.
Before we move on to our next game, quick question: Rachaad White.
Yeah.
Is this an offensive line issue? What do we got going on with him? Because we've seen he's been very inefficient. And then you look at the guy that I was really high on, and if it wasn't for a heart issue that came up in the combine, I think Sean Tucker's a third or a fourth round pick this year. And he has been even more inefficient if even possible. So what's the issues with the running game in Tampa Bay?
No, I think it's a combination. It's a combination of the offensive line play, and it's a combination of Rachaad White. I think the vision has not been what we wanted it to be. He's, in my opinion, he can run between the tackles, but I like to see him get out in space. I like the wide zone. I like zone scheme more than I like the gap scheme with Rachaad White. They're pretty balanced in terms of what they do in both, but he's just not he's not breaking tackles. He's not giving you the explosive runs that that you wanted him to give you coming out of ASU, which is a big part of what his selling point was. And he's not getting you the target, so they're not using him in the passing game like they thought they would. And so that's a little bit surprising to not see him getting more targets. He has a more complete route tree than a lot of running backs in the NFL, and they're just not using that to their advantage. So it's a combination of a lot of things with Rachaad White, but it's not been pretty.
All right, let's get to our first question before we move on to Miami Dolphins 3-0 at Buffalo Bills 2-1. Pittman or Waddle? One of the reasons why I wanted to wait is because we're going to talk about Miami here in a second, and I feel like the Bills are going to win, so which increases the passing game even more for Miami. So that's Waddle for me. And in this one, I'll let you take this question, Coach. This is Cam's got a PPR flex. He's got Achane, Nico Collins, or Josh Palmer. For me, the ceiling play is Achane. The safe play is Nico Collins. What about you, Coach?
Yeah, you nailed it. It's funny. You can say Josh Palmer, safe floor. Nico Collins, safe floor. Achane, higher ceiling. And so I think it depends on what you're chasing. So and where you're at in terms of those other positions. But I would go Nico Collins here to be safe. I like the matchup this week for Houston. As much as I love Devon Achane, and I know you do too. We talk about this, it seems like every week, since the offseason, how big you were on him. But I think you take the safer play here, which I think is Nico Collins.
All right, let's move on to breakdown of that game. Miami Dolphins 3-0, Buffalo Bills 2-1. I like the Bills winning 31-24 at home. How about you, Coach?
Yeah, I've got Bills 31, Miami 27. I like them winning at home as well.
I would love to see the Dolphins win, though. I think that would be great for football. I think what Mike McDaniel, help me out here, Coach.
Mike McDaniel.
Coach for Dolphins. Thank you. Holy smokes. Really, I mean, that's about as much fun of an offense as you're going to see. So for the starts for Miami, I like Tua. I like Mostert. I like Hill. I like Waddle. For Buffalo, you're playing Josh Allen. You're playing James Cook, who, man, I'll tell you, I wasn't exactly very high on him, but he's proven to be a 3-down back, and really excited if you were able to get him in your redraft leagues, because you probably took him in round 8 to 9. And then I mean, you got to play Stephon Diggs. My sits, we've talked about him. In fact, he was one of my risers. That's Devin Achane. I kind of look, man. It's weird to say sit a guy who goes over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns, but I'm going to sit him 1 week and see if we get the same thing. Again, there's some leagues where he's just out. I mean, you and I are in a league together. We're co-commissioners or co-managers in the league, and we're playing A-Chain. So obviously it matters on roster size. It matters on who else you have. But even though I like the amount of volume as far as his playing time, I'm not starting Durham Smythe this week. For Buffalo, just made a trade in my home league, had to kind of shake things up. So I now have Dalton Kincaid on my home league team. Unfortunately, though, I'm not ready to start him. I am in my home league because, again, I don't have much of a choice because I thought Quentin Johnston was going to do much more this year, but he just isn't. And I'm also sitting Gabe Davis. Moving on, we've got another one of those fun games. We've got 2 winless teams. That's the Denver Broncos 0-3 at Chicago Bears 0-3. Might surprise you I have winning, but I like the Bears winning at home 24-21. What about you, Coach?
That's almost one of those games where it's like one team just gave up 70 points to Miami last week, and the other team, everybody wanted to blame Matt Nagy. Now it's Matt Eberflus, and they can't figure out who they are and what they're doing in Chicago. But I've got Denver 24, Chicago 21. I would not be surprised, and part of that's because of Russell Wilson. And I get they were 70-20, so you're throwing the ball, but he seems to be a little bit more locked in with Sean Payton, and I think as each week goes on, he plays a little bit better in terms of the passing game. So I've got Denver for that reason. But the Bears do cover because they're plus 3.5. Even the Broncos win by 3, and I've got the under. Starting, I've got Russell Wilson, 19.1 fantasy points per game. It's a great matchup this week. He's 10th in passing yards, 6th in yards per attempt, and the QB 10 on the year. And Bears give up the 5th most fantasy points to the quarterback position. So I like Russell Wilson. I like Javonte Williams. He's RB19 in Fantasy Pros consensus rankings. Bears can get it done against the run, but with an increasing workload and his ability in the passing game, I expect Jay Will to get loose this week and find the end zone. Jerry Jeudy. I like this. I like the receivers. I like Cortland Sutton. I like Jerry Jeudy. I even like Marvin Mims in deeper leagues. If you're in a real deep league and you're looking for a splash play, a boom or bust type play, I think Marvin Mims has an opportunity to take one to the house this week. I've got him as part of my prop bets for anytime touchdown, so I like Marvin Mims. Chicago, I'm not starting anybody. I think Justin Fields is QB 10 in terms of where they have him ranked this week in the consensus rankings, but enter at your own risk. I get Denver gave up 70 points last week. I don't trust him in the passing game yet, and they've only had 3 quarterback design runs this year, which makes 0 sense with a guy like Justin Fields. So unfortunately, until I see better play calling, I don't trust him. So therefore, I don't trust DJ Moore, and I don't trust Cole Kmet.
There you go. Let's move on to another game that we hope will be a little bit better for fantasy managers, and that's Washington Commanders 2-1 at your Philadelphia Eagles. I like the Eagles winning this one 27-17.
Yeah, I've got a 31-13. Philadelphia, I continue to say it. They're so good in the trenches on both sides of the ball, and you've got Jalen Hurts that protects the football. You've got a head coach that likes to run it, and that opens up the play action, the passing game, and the vertical passing game in Philly with Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. So I just think that Philly wins at home, and I think they win big.
Okay, let's move on to I haven't gotten start and sits yet. Coach, why don't you answer Ridley, Tank Dell, DJ Moore, or Palmer? It's definitely Ridley, and then I'll let you decide. You'll have the hard decision. Pick one from the others. Start and sits for this game. I like for Washington, I'm playing Brian Robinson. I'm playing Terry McLaurin, and I think Logan Thomas is going to get in the end zone this week. And for Philadelphia, I like Jalen Hurts. Love what we're seeing out of DeAndre Swift. I'm going with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Sits, real disappointed what I saw last week out of Sam Howell. He's a guy that we had as a faller in our Wednesday show. And obviously, you talk about falling. Antonio Gibson, he's fallen. He's like that old commercial. I've fallen, I can't get up, unfortunately. And for Philadelphia, I'm not sure what's going on with Dallas Goedert. But until I see more out of him, I'm not starting him if I don't have to. Moving on, we've got another question here. Before we move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers at Houston Texans, we have got 2 running backs: Rashawn Johnson, Chuba, Breece Hall, Jalen Ward, Charbonnet, Breeder Kelly. I'll take a look at this while you break down the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Pittsburgh Steelers 2-1 at Houston Texans 1-2. I like this. I like the Steelers winning on the road. I got Steelers 23, Texans 20.
Yeah, I've got Pittsburgh Steelers 24, Houston Texans 20. So we're very close there. And on Delagizi, if I'm saying that right, Jeezy Manezi on his hop easy, whatever his name is. But I like Rashawn Johnson and Jalen Warren there. I think Pittsburgh will get in that game if we haven't already. But Jalen Warren, I think, has a big week this week. And I think Najee Harris also pops for a touchdown. But I think Rashawn Johnson takes over that backfield in Chicago this week. I really do.
I would keep an eye out in the morning, though, because there's a lot of talk that Miles Sanders may not be able to go. So if that's the case, I'm going with Chuba.
Yeah, you have to. Sanders isn't playing. So on the Pittsburgh game, I've got, as far as starts go, I've got Najee Harris. I just said it. The Houston Texans struggle to stop the run. I like Najee Harris and Jalen Warren this week. I do think Najee Harris. I think Zeke Elliott, more opportunity in the run game and early downs. And then Jalen Ward, I think Tony Pollard more explosive with his touches when he gets an opportunity. I think this is the week that Jalen Warren and Najee Harris both find the end zone. George Pickens, I like 22.7 points in week 2, and he's got 14.3 on the season. And then Pat Freiermuth, who finally got in the end zone last week. He's having 13.1 fantasy points last week. I like him in this matchup. And then for Houston, I like Nico Collins and Tank Dell this week. Tank Dell is a guy that is 17.4 fantasy points per game, and he's over 20 the last 2 weeks in a row. But we need to remember he's not getting the snap share you would like to see out of a guy that's a must start. So we want to kind of temper. He's doing a lot with his opportunities, almost to the point where it's not going to be easy to maintain that level of success with the limited amount of touches he gets in terms of overall snap share. But if he can get more snap shares and get involved a little bit more, I certainly like Tank Dell, but Nico Collins is a safe play there. As good as CJ Stroud has played at 21, averaging 21 points over the last couple of weeks, he's 17.2 on the season. I'm not fully confident in him this week with TJ Watt and that front. They can get to the quarterback, so he's not a must start for me for CJ Stroud. So I'm sitting him and I'm sitting Robert Woods. And for Pittsburgh, I'm sitting Calvin Austin and I'm sitting Allen Robinson. Calvin Austin, I see the upside there. I'm just not ready to put him in my lineup yet. Allen Robinson's wide receiver 71 and 4.7 over the last 2 games. So I don't trust Allen Robinson. Man, talk about a guy that's really fallen off over the last few years from where he was. Yeah. I didn't see it coming, and here we are. Change of teams did not change the outcome. And I'm not starting Damian Pierce and Dalton Schultz for Houston. I know Damian's a volume play. I don't trust it. 9 fantasy points per game, and Dalton Schultz is only at 3.9. So not playing either one of those guys either.
All right, let's move on to the 1 o'clock slate. Las Vegas Raiders 1-2 at Los Angeles Chargers 1-2. We don't know the status of Jimmy G quite yet. Have you heard anything definite? Because I haven't. So I like the Chargers winning 27-20. How do you see this playing out as far as score?
Yeah, I've got Chargers 28-16. I think the Chargers obviously cover at 5.5. They're minus 5.5, so they'll cover that. And then I've got the under. And I picked the under simply because I think the Chargers do get out early. I'm assuming that Jimmy G is not playing. If that means Brian Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell, I don't like that option for the Vegas Raiders. So I'm taking the Chargers 28-16 in this one.
Okay, we're pretty close on the score there. Let's move on to start and sit for Las Vegas. I feel like Josh Jacobs is going to get a lot of volume with the quarterback issue. I don't care who's playing quarterback. What we've seen out of Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers, I'm playing both those guys. I've been really impressed with what we've seen from Jacoby Myers and the move from New England to Vegas. For Los Angeles, I'm starting Herbert. I'm starting Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, man, that guy seems to be getting younger, not older. I do like Josh Palmer to start, and I like Gerald Everett. I think Gerald Everett gets in the end zone this week. For Las Vegas, I'm not starting the quarterback, whoever it is. And I wish we would have seen some more from Michael Mayer at this point, but we haven't. Yeah. So I'm not starting him. For Los Angeles, you know what? It's so funny. You know, Josh Kelly has made us virtually impossible for us to start him. So this will probably be the week that we see some big numbers, and he could against Vegas. But I'm not starting him, and I'm not ready to start Quentin Johnston yet. We haven't seen the volume. We haven't seen the big playability from him quite yet, and I'm not starting Donald Palmer or Parham. All right, moving on. Arizona Cardinals, 1-2 at the San Francisco 49ers, 3-0. As good as the Cardinals have played, I'm still going San Francisco. I like San Francisco 33, Cardinals 14.
Yeah, I've got Niners 34, Cardinals 13, so we're very close within a couple points there. So Niners cover the 14-point spread, and we have the over. As far as starts go, look, it's a terrible matchup for James Conner, but that cupboard is completely bare in the backfield when you get past James Conner. He's dominating the snaps. He's dominating the pass catching at the running back position and that. He's dominating the snap share. He's going to have to
he went against a great defense last week and still put up incredible numbers. So he's like just the question we just got right here from King Louis the 13th. Love that name, by the way. Flex, Mixon, Connor, or Godwin. I'm riding Connor until he shows he can't do it anymore.
I'm with you. He's healthy. He's not, he typically gets nicked up this time of the year, but he's fully healthy and he's playing really, really well. He's playing hard. He's running hard, which is what James Conner has done his entire career. I'm not starting him. I don't care who the opponent is because the volume and the opportunity is there. He's going to get you the touches. So, and then Marquise Brown is the last 2 weeks, he scored over 17 fantasy points in both of those games. He's getting some volume. If this game gets out of hand, like you and I think it will in terms of total score, Cardinals are going to have to throw the ball a little bit more. We saw what Joshua Dobbs did last week at 21-24 against Dallas. His number one target is going to be Marquise Brown. For San Francisco, I'm starting Brock Purdy. He's a starter in Superflex. One quarterback leagues, you might have better options there, of course, but in Superflex, he's a must start for me. He won't have to do much if the game gets ugly, but if it's close at all, I expect the usual 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and he's going to get you 17 to 20 fantasy points. Christian McCaffrey, must start. It's 23.8 fantasy points per game. His lowest output was 22.5, so you're starting McCaffrey. Deebo Samuel dealing with some ribs and a knee injury. He has scored over the last 2 weeks, 22 and 25. Brandon Ayuk's been out with the injury, but I think Brandon Ayuk is back this week. Deebo has the rib and knee issue. I think they both are startable, but I think Brandon Ayuk, if Deebo is limited or sits out, then obviously Ayuk becomes a big play there. I like George Kittle. Cardinals do not play historically well against the tight end position. I expect George Kittle to find the end zone. I think he has a big week this week. As far as sits, I'm sitting Zach Ertz. We love the target share over the first 2 games, but he's only at 7.4 fantasy points per game. I'm not playing Joshua Dobbs against this defense, and I'm not playing Rondale Moore or Michael Wilson. As much as we both love Michael Wilson, this is not the matchup. We need to see more reps and more snap share from him to start. And for San Francisco, I'm kind of making a joke here because you're starting everybody. The only guy I don't like is Ronnie Bell. Jawan Jennings is out. Should be. He's doubtful right now. All signs are pointing to him missing the game. That puts Ronnie Bell in the wide receiver 3 situation, but I don't. Unless it's late and he gets a garbage touchdown, I'm certainly not putting him in the lineup.
Hey, let's go back. Appears that we missed a question. Question was, what's the game script Chicago and Denver? If Fields runs, does that bust Moore or Rashawn? What are your thoughts on that, Coach?
I think in Chicago, the game script is going to be what it's been until Matt Eberflus shows us something different. He's going to try to run the football by committee, and that has not involved Justin Fields like it should. I think the reality is Miami threw for over 300 and they ran for 350. So you can attack Denver however you want. I would like to see Matt Eberflus open things up, get DJ Moore some quick passes in the screen game, use Cole Kmet in the middle of the field on snag routes, hitch routes, curl routes, you name it. Use him for leverage. He's a big target. But until they start to open up Justin Fields and allow him to play and run quarterback draw on 3rd and long, right? Let's see the zone read and look for him to pull it and run with the ball. Let's see power read. Let's see the things that make Justin Fields who he is. But until I see it, I don't believe in it.
What do you think about this? Here's good old Delagizi again. Again, we'll never get the name right. I like the way you said it. It was much better. It wasn't quite as good as I said Chiga Kugapakuku or whatever, however you say that. But did you know that Joshua Dobbs was applying on Amazon a month before the start of the season. He's been a hell of a story for them. I mean, a lot of people were thinking that this is just more indication that the Cardinals are simply going to tank for Caleb Williams. He's come in. He's been competitive. He even trolled your Cowboys last week.
Yeah, he did.
So it's been a great story for sure. New England Patriots 1-2 at your Dallas Cowboys 2-1. I see the Cowboys bouncing back, especially playing at home. I like the Cowboys 27, Patriots 17.
Yeah, I've got Cowboys 29, New England 19. I think the Cowboys figure out the red zone this week. I think they punch it in. So I've got them winning big this week.
All right, for our starts and sits for New England, I think Ramondre Stevenson's earned the right to be a must-start week in, week out. And I like Zeke Elliott. You talk about I feel like they're going to try and keep the ball away from Dallas, and one of the ways they're going to do that, I wouldn't be surprised to see about 50-plus yards rushing for Zeke with a touchdown score. And I really like what I've seen out of Hunter Henry, so I'm playing Hunter Henry. For Dallas, I like Tony Pollard, I like CeeDee Lamb, and I like Dak Prescott having a bounce-back game after last week. I'm sitting Mac Jones and all their wide receivers. And for Dallas, I'm sitting Gallup, Cooks, and Ferguson. You good with those, Coach?
I am good with those. I've got Zeke Elliott as part of my anytime touchdown parlay as well. I think Zeke Elliott finds the end zone, revenge game. He's playing against the Cowboys. I think Bill Belichick finds a way to get him in the end zone.
Let's move on. Too bad they couldn't flex out of this game because without Aaron Rodgers, I'm not sure how many people want to see that offense play Sunday night.
Yeah.
But regardless, we have them, and that's Kansas City 2-1 at the New York Jets 1-2. I like Kansas City 27, New York 13.
Yeah, I've got Kansas City 25, New York 13. We're, again, within a couple points, which means Kansas City covers at -9.5, and I like the over. I'm starting Patrick Mahomes. So that's a no-brainer. I'm starting Travis Kelce, another no-brainer. With Taylor Swift present and with all the Swifties getting involved, I think Travis Kelce continues to do what he does. And I like, as a sneaky play, I like Rashee Rice. He's the only wide receiver in Kansas City with 2 10-plus point games this season in fantasy PPR points. You're starting to see him get more snaps, be trusted a little bit more. I think he's the guy. I feel like he finds the end zone this week. And, of course, with the Jets, I'm not comfortable starting anybody in this Jets offense, period. So even Garrett Wilson, as much as I love the talent, 14.4 in week 1, 16.3 in week 2, only because he took that glance route to the house, but just 9.8 last week. I don't see it. I think Kansas City's pass rush has improved now that Chris Jones is back. I don't see the Jets doing much in terms of scoring.
You hear any news? Is Trevor Siemian going to dress this week? Because if he does, and we see nothing out of New York at the first half, you think there's a chance we see Trevor in there?
I don't this week. I think they ride with Zach Wilson this week, and I think you could see Trevor Siemian, because he's only been there for a week and a half. I think you see him become the starter possibly the following week. But I'd be surprised to see him get in late in the game, unless it's just a typical scenario where you're down 30 in the fourth quarter, and at that point you're kind of like, hey, let's just put Trevor in. But I don't think it's a situation where they make the change because the game is somewhat close and they think Trevor Siemian can bring the Jets back. I don't see a move for that reason.
Okay, let's move on to our next question before we get into our last game of the week. Flex, Jordan Addison, Christian Kirk, Jerry Jeudy, or Mark Andrews. I have Kelce at tight end. I'm going with the tight end. I'm going with Mark Andrews.
Yeah, Zay Jones is still out. I do like Christian Kirk this week. I do like Jordan Addison this week, but again, with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson, he is the third option in that offense. So I think the safe play is Mark Andrews. Look, at some point, Mark Andrews got to get going. He's way too talented. So I agree with you. I would take Mark Andrews this week as well.
Okay, let's move on to our Monday Night Football game, and I'm looking forward to this one. This one should be a good one. Seattle Seahawks 2-1 at New York Giants 1-2, as well as Seattle played and in upsetting, so to speak, Detroit last week. I like the Giants winning at home. I like the Giants. I see it. The Giants 23, Seahawks 20.
Yeah, I've got Seahawks 24, Giants 21. I certainly get, and you could go either way, but I've got the Seahawks going on the road and take one away from the New York Giants.
All right, let's move into the start and sits for Seattle. I love what we're seeing out of Kenneth Walker, so I'm starting him. And I'm starting both receivers, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. For New York, until we get Barkley back for sure, I'm not starting anyone other than Daniel Jones and Darren Waller. Sits for me are going to be Zach Charbonnet. I do like the usage that we're seeing out of him. There is an uptake every week. 1 week we will see a kind of a breakout game from him, but I just don't see it happening this week. I'm sitting Geno Smith, and it breaks my heart. I would kind of expected a lot more out of JSN at this point, but you got to remember the guy's still dealing with a wrist injury that he broke his wrist 2 weeks before the start of the season. So just got to hope we're going to see some more out of him here soon. And for New York, I'm sitting Matthew Breida and all wide receivers. You good with those, Coach?
I am good with those. I think we're only different on a couple games, weren't we? I think other than that, we picked all the games as far as who's going to win the same. So
we got different on this one, but that's about it. All right, let's get into this last question. Here we go. We'll put it up before we head out. PNW, where's PNW, Coach? You take a guess on that one.
Pacific Northwest. So I'm assuming he's up in the Washington, Oregon area.
There you go. Seahawk fan, maybe? Who knows? Full PPR, running back, ETN, Cook, Mostert. Who should I leave out? So only one person's not going to be playing. It looks like that's a tough one.
I can tell you who I'd sit.
Go ahead.
I'd sit DK Metcalf in that group.
Okay, I'm good with that. I like that's why it's taken me a while, because I wish that I had these choices, and if I could play all these guys, I feel pretty good about it. But it's DK Metcalf is who we would sit. Any others before we head out, Coach? You good?
Nope, I'm good, man. Great show, and happy that we were able to jump on Saturday morning. I'll be out shooting tomorrow, which is why I couldn't do it tomorrow. A bunch of friends and the wives are all going to go out. We're going to go shooting tomorrow and then grab some brunch before the Cowboys game. So looking forward to spending some family time. Appreciate you making the adjustment to get on the show on a Saturday morning.
Hey, no problem. We'll get into this question real quick before we leave. Just a random topic. Are you taking Caleb Williams over Kyler? I don't think they're going to be in position to take Caleb Williams now. He says, I'll take Kyler in my opinion. I don't know. One of the things when everyone was talking about tanking for Caleb is that they didn't take in consideration what type of contract they're dealing with Kyler. It's not going to be an easy move to move off of Kyler to get Caleb, as far as being able to move Kyler, or obviously you're not going to keep both of them. So I don't know if I'm going to take Kyler over Caleb Williams straight up, but due to all the situation that goes along with Kyler, I don't think they're going to even have a chance to get Caleb, but probably going to have to stick with Kyler.
So let me ask you this. Hypothetically, if you did get the number one pick, and I don't care. So if you take this from a prospect standpoint, right? Forget about what Kyler Murray's done in the NFL at this point. But if Caleb Williams and Kyler Murray were coming out the same year, who's your number one overall pick?
It's easy for me. It's Caleb Williams. And the reason why is he's got the size. He's got, and then unfortunately we do have history with Kyler, and the history has been, you don't put something in that contract when you're saying you have to at least study for this amount of time if there weren't issues. And there have been issues. I will say, though, a lot of the things that we've heard out of camp, they made him captain of the team. So obviously since Gannon has come in, he's liked what he's seen. He's got the buy-in from him. But if we're just talking player for player, give me Caleb Williams.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I go with it. You've got the size, you've got the arm strength, you've got the ability to make plays off script. He's Mahomes-esque in that regard, but he's playing not playing at Texas Tech. He's playing at USC and playing against some of the best competition in the country. So for me, and look, I was big on Kyler Murray coming out. I'm not as big on him as I was then, simply because of all the stuff that's kind of gone on with them asking him to study film for 4 hours. And now he's hurt, and that's some of the concerns for running quarterback at his size. So I would go Caleb Williams there, but I certainly understand why people would go Kyler Murray. I just don't think we ever see the Kyler Murray that was an MVP candidate a few years ago. I don't think we ever see that Kyler Murray again.
I don't think we see the running Kyler Murray quite as much, and that's why he was so valuable in fantasy. Is because, you can remember that 2019 season.
Oh, special.
That guy was just. Yeah, it was. So, but regardless, great show. Thank you all who tuned in. Thank you all for the comments. Anytime we see a comment, we're going to do our best to answer it on air. So thank you so much. We look forward to seeing you guys Wednesday, 7 p.m. We'll have our Thursday night preview. We'll have our risers and fallers, and we'll also talk about injuries and news. Coach, appreciate you always. Have a great day tomorrow, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Take care, everybody.